Hi guys, welcome back to my kitchen and welcome if you're new here. Today's video I'm going to take you along as I cook dinner for my family during the winter storm that is going through over here in our area. The entire garden is covered in snow. I love looking out at it. All the beds, everything covered in just mountains and mountains of snow. So for this video, I will have timestamps for you of everything that we're making, and I will have links for recipes for whatever I can. So the recipes that we're making is, today we're going to have almond salmon. So salmon with like crushed almonds on top. It's a family favorite with some mac and cheese. And I pulled out some butternut squash soup that I'm going to reheat from our soup video. I can link that for you. And the soup I'm going to have ready for right when everybody gets home. And like that, we can eat on this until dinner is ready. The next thing we're going to be making is a sweet and savory beef stew with vegetable dumplings. The vegetable dumplings is something that we have made before, and I know that we love it. The beef stew is something new, and I'm looking forward to trying it. It seems like something that my family would enjoy, so fingers crossed we do. The next thing we'll be making is a baked potato soup, which I've been intrigued by for a while. So I'm looking forward to trying it and seeing how we like it. And to round it out, to make it more of a meal, since I'm kosher and I don't do bacon, so I'm not mixing the meat and dairy either. I'm going to, so like the soup doesn't have much to it other than like the soup and, the potatoes, and it does call for cream, half and half and milk. So it has a little bit up there. So to fill that in, I am also going to make a grilled cheese sandwiches. Then we're going to make it's called meat mushroom barley soup, which that in itself should be pretty filling. It has the barley, it'll have vegetables and meat. And so I'm just going to serve it with some toasted I want to toast it some toasted baguettes, like cut baguettes into slices, sort of like a crostini, I think it's called. I'm not sure, but like just cut the baguette, toast it. I might just do like some garlic on it, like oil and garlic, to give it a little bit of a garlic flavor. We'll see when I make it what I feel like. And the last thing we'll be making is a beef stroganoff, and we're going to serve it over rice. So if anything of this sounds intriguing or exciting, follow along and let's get cooking. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to start prepping the salmon. So for that, we need crushed almonds. So I have this bag of roasted salted almonds, and I am going to crush it up and then get it back into the bag. I decided to do the entire bag of almonds because, like I said earlier, this is a fish that is a family favorite. So I like having the crushed almonds on hand whenever I want to make it. I just have that ready. And in this day, I did not have any left in my house, so I just had to freshly grind up whatever almonds I did have. Now I'm going to mix together the spices that will be going on top of the salmon. So I'm starting off in a ramekin. I'm going to add a teaspoon of kosher salt. Next, I'm getting some garlic. I'm going to peel them and crush them. Add some olive oil in there. I'm going to mix this together and set it aside. I'm getting a 9x13 ready for the fish by spraying it with some oil and then getting oil on my fish slices in there. Now I can get our spice oil mixture spread over top of the fish. Plenty of times I have skipped the step of prepping it beforehand and just sprinkling the salt over the fish and then crushing the garlic directly over it and drizzling the oil, and it works perfectly fine as well doing it that way. Now I will drizzle some honey over top, sprinkle a generous amount of the crushed almonds to cover the entire slice, and finally another drizzle of honey. This is now ready for the oven, and it'll bake on 425 for 20 to 25 minutes. Now that the fish is in the oven, I'm going to move on to the mac and cheese. And the first thing is to cook the pasta, and I'm going to do that according to the package directions. While the pasta is cooking, I'm going to start getting some things going for our cheese sauce. So I'm starting off with some flour, sea salt, and garlic powder in a small bowl. And I by mistake cooked an entire pound of pasta. The recipe does call for only half, so I'm doubling the cheese sauce recipe. We're going to mix it together and set it aside. Once the pasta is ready, we're going to drain it, and we're going to get going on the cheese sauce, which I'm going to do in the same pot. And we're going to do this as quickly as possible so that the pasta is still hot when we get it into the cheese sauce. Okay, over here I positioned my camera. I thought I hit record, and apparently I didn't. So the way that I started the sauce is that I melted some butter. Once it was 90 to 95% melted, I added the flour, sea salt, and garlic powder mixture that we had prepared, and I let that brown for a minute, cook for a minute to create our roux. I added in some milk, and this is where I'm at now. We are mixing it together until this is nice and smooth. At this point, we can add either Greek yogurt or sour cream. I usually used Greek yogurt because I wanted to up the protein in the dish. On this day, I used sour cream because I had the perfect amount left in my fridge, and I figured instead of buying a Greek yogurt and having the sour cream go bad in my fridge, I'd rather use that up. And we all enjoyed it way more like this. It was way more creamier than it usually was, and we enjoyed that texture way more. So going forward, I would probably use the sour cream instead of the Greek yogurt. We're going to mix this and let it cook until the mixture thickens up a bit. Once the mixture has thickened, it's time to add our cheese. So we're going to lower the heat because you don't want the cheese to separate. If it gets too hot, the cheese will separate instead of mix in. We're going to add in the cheese and stir it in until it is melted and the mixture is nice and smooth. And I like to shred my own cheese. I buy the block and I shred it myself because I feel that it melts a lot nicer and the texture is a lot better this way than using the pre-shredded. Once the cheese has melted and it's fully incorporated, we can add in the pasta, mix that in until it is all nice and evenly coated. This dinner combination was a great option because my husband doesn't love dairy or the pasta. So he had fish and soup, but the rest of us had a little bit of everything, and this was an amazing dinner. The next dinner we'll be making is our braised beef stew and vegetable dumplings. So for this, we're going to start off with making a caramel for our beef. Since I am a kosher consumer, I cannot make caramel with milk or cream and then have it with the beef. So I'm going to show you afterwards how we're going to add flavor to this without adding the dairy. We're going to melt the sugar, mixing it often until it is melted and smooth. Once it is melted, we're going to remove it from the heat. For the depth of flavor that I told you about earlier, we're going to add soy sauce and Worcestershire sauce, and we're going to mix this in until it is combined. And it is likely that the sugar will seize, and you'll see that that will happen to me. So I just keep on turning the heat back on for a little bit, letting that sugar melt a little bit again, mixing it in, and I'm going to do this until this is nice and smooth and slightly thickened. In all honesty, mine didn't thicken up very much, but I figured as it'll cool, it'll thicken up a little bit, and that's what happened in actuality, and it was perfect. Now I heated my Dutch oven to very high heat. I'm adding oil to my pot, and the reason why you do it in a Dutch oven is because first of all, you want it very hot, and second, you're gonna make the meat in here and then take the whole thing and put it into the oven. So if you don't have a Dutch oven, just use any oven-safe pot. Once the pot is hot, we are adding some beef stew. So mine was kind of chunky and I wanted it smaller, so I cut it up seasoned it with some kosher salt and black pepper. I'm adding it into the Dutch oven, and we're gonna let it brown on all sides. You don't need it to cook all the way through because it's gonna go into the oven. It's gonna be in the oven for a nice long time, so the meat will cook. You just want to brown the meat. This browning is called umami. It adds a depth of flavor to the final dish. And if you've seen any of my Shabbos videos, in the cholent you can see that I add an umami spice. That is a mushroom-based spice that mimics the flavor that you would get from anything that you umami. It's a caramelized flavor, which when you brown meat, you get it on that. If you do like grilled cheese and you get a nice golden color on it, nice golden crisp on it, that's umami. You can do it with anything, with chicken, you can do it with onions, you can do it with meat, you can do it on the grilled cheese. Anything that you get that gorgeous brown color without burning, that's umami. Next up, I got some shallots that I had sliced into strips, and I'm adding it in with the beef. I'm gonna mix it in, and then I read my directions and I see that I'm supposed to remove the meat from the pot and add the shallots directly into the pot without the meat. So when I noticed my mistake, I removed the meat from the pot and I just let the shallots continue cooking without the meat in there. And you can see as this onion is cooking, the shallots are cooking, the bottom of the pot may look like it's burning. It's just the residual fat that came out of the meat as it was rendering, and it is cooking and browning at the bottom of the pot. Do not be concerned, just make sure that the heat is not on too high, and you'll see later on how we're going to use that, and we're going to get it off of the bottom of the pot, and we're going to add that delicious flavor that we're creating into the sauce. Once the shallots have softened, we're going to add in some fresh ginger that I have peeled and coarsely chopped, along with jalapeno that I have deveined and de-seeded because I didn't want to end up with a very spicy dish at the end. And that is chopped up as well. And then it calls for some garlic minced or frozen garlic cubes. I just crushed it up and it was perfectly fine. Once I have that in the pot, we're gonna let that cook for about a minute. After which we're gonna add in some brandy or red wine. I was planning to use red wine, but when it came to cooking it up, I realized that I don't have any, so I found some brandy. I added that, and we're gonna let that reduce, and you'll see as it's cooking down, the browning on the pot is gonna soften up, and I can scrape all of that up off of the bottom, and it's gonna end up in the sauce, adding that delicious flavor to it. My brandy cooked off very fast because this burner that I'm using is a very big burner, and it just cooked down so super fast before I had a chance to get all of that off of the bottom. So I added some water, and I scraped the rest of it off. Once it was all off, I was able to continue on as the recipe says to do next, which is adding the meat back in with any accumulated juices, along with either coconut water or chicken stock. They do write in the recipe that the coconut water adds a richness. I just didn't know if I would like the coconut because I generally don't like the coconut flavor. So I chose to go with the chicken stock. And just foreshadowing, this was delicious, devoured. My family loved this dish, and I would definitely make it again. Oh, the recipe directions does not say to add the caramel that we made earlier, but I was like, when am I supposed to add it? I should add it before this goes into the oven. So after I added the meat back in, I added the caramel and then the broth. Now for the liquid, the coconut or the broth, it does give an amount to use, but based on the size of the pot that you're using, you want the liquid to almost cover the meat. Not completely, but almost cover it. And then we're going to cover this pot and get it into the oven, which has been preheated to 300 degrees We're going to cook this for an hour and 20 minutes. And then we're going to uncover it and cook it for an additional 30 minutes. The first cook is to get it nice and tender. The second cook is to let the exposed pieces brown up. The recipe does say to serve this warm with a pan sauce. And I had made this, like I said, with vegetable dumplings. And you'll see me make it in a minute. Next time I would not serve it like that. I would do it over rice probably, or a pasta. And because it was a lot of work for one meal. Now to get going on our vegetable dumplings, I heated up a wok until it was nice and hot. I added oil, and then once the oil was hot, I added in an onion that I have diced up. I'm going to let this cook until the onions are translucent. Next, we're going to add in some mushrooms, season it with some black pepper to taste. Does it call for salt as well? No, just the black pepper. And I'm going to cook this down for a few minutes as well until most of the moisture coming out of the mushrooms has cooked off. The recipe does call for shiitake mushrooms. When I went to the store, they didn't have any shiitake, so just white mushrooms. We had gotten back from Florida. We had gone on vacation. I had to cook all the meals that I made there, and at the moment, I lost all that footage. I'm trying to retrieve it. If and when I do get it back, I will put that video out for you. I've been wanting to make a video like that for a while for you guys, cooking kosher while away. So I had gone to the store Sunday morning when the storm has officially started already. So I had to buy whatever the store had. I couldn't wait and go back to the store later that day or the following day when they had fresh vegetables. It just wouldn't have been practical to go out in the storm to get additional ingredients. Once the mushrooms have started to brown, we can add in cabbage and carrots, and we're going to continue cooking this until the carrots and cabbage are nice and tender and most of the liquid has cooked. You want all the liquid to cook off, and you want to keep on mixing it to prevent browning. Once the vegetables are done cooking, we're going to transfer it into a bowl, and we're going to add in some sesame oil, apple cider vinegar, and soy sauce, and we're going to mix it all together, and we're going to set it aside to let it cool a little bit. Once the vegetables have cooled off a little bit, we can start putting together the dumplings. So I have a pack of round dumpling wrappers, and I used half, maybe one more than a half of the pack of wrappers. So if you want to make a full package of wonton wrappers into these dumplings, I would suggest doubling this recipe of the filling. And the way I'm doing it, the way I'm filling it is that I'm taking a wrapper into my hand. I am putting about a heaping teaspoon of filling in the center, spreading some water around the edges of it, and then pinching it closed. I'm not doing any pleats or any like intricate folds on it. I'm just pressing it together. Because these wonton wrappers are not very big, so it's kind of hard to do anything different with it. If you have a bigger wonton wrapper, go ahead, make it look fancy with those pleats as you crimp the edges, or be creative with it. And as long as they are sealed properly so that they don't open up when they cook, they're fine. And even if they do, some of mine opened up while it was cooking and it was still fine. It's just harder to eat that way. I am going to do this with all of the filling until this is completely done. And if you want, you can freeze it at this point. I have done it in the past, but on this day we ended up eating all of it. We cooked it in batches. So I made one for dinner, and then we wanted some more, so I cooked up some more, and a little bit later we wanted some more again, so I cooked up the rest of it. But if you do want to use it for multiple meals and you want to meal prep this is the point where you would freeze it. Okay, so the way to cook up these dumplings is I have a skillet over high heat, and I'm going to add in some oil, and we're going to let that heat up as well. Once it is nice and hot, I'm going to get the dumplings into the pan, and if you fold it in any intricate way and you have a flat side, then lay it on the flat side. For me, because of the way I folded it, it just doesn't matter. Just get it in. I just got it onto any side of the dumpling, and we're going to let it cook up for about 2 to 3 minutes. Then I'm going to lower the heat, carefully add water just to coat the bottom of the pan. And the reason to be careful is because this will splatter. And as soon as you get just that little bit of water in there, cover it immediately. I'm going to let this steam until the water dissipates. The recipe does state about 5 minutes, so at the 3-4 minute mark, you can start like peeking in and seeing if there's any water left or not. Once all the water is gone, you'll remove the lid, increase the heat to medium high, and we're going to let the bottoms brown and crisp about another 2 to 3 additional minutes. While I'm doing that, I am also preparing the dipping sauce, which I'm not showing you, but if you follow the recipe in the linked in the description box, you will have the recipe for that as well in there. And it says to transfer this onto a cooling rack that is set over paper towel lined baking sheet. I never do that. I usually just put it on a plate with a top, which was the top, so it's like more tender, flipped over, so even as it sweats, that's okay. The crispy side will stay crispy, and we usually eat it within minutes, so that's fine. The reason why you would want to do that is if you're cooking all of them at once, cooking all of them in stages and serving it all at once, then you want it to stay nice and crispy. That's when I would probably set it onto the cooling rack like they recommend. Now it is time to plate up this meal and eat. So I'm starting off by adding the meat with the pan drippings into my plate. And as you can see, my husband couldn't wait. The smell was so delicious, he had to grab a piece and taste it. I am getting my dumplings into the plate, and I am getting some little cups to add the dipping sauce into so that we can each personally dip our own dumplings in it. Like I said, the meat was delicious, and I am definitely going to be making this again. The same thing as the dumplings, which I already knew before because we made it. Look at the meat. Soft and tender on one side, crispy and delicious on the second side. Was perfection. Yeah, the dumplings I've made in the past, and I know it's a family favorite. And like I had mentioned before, it's a very labor intensive. Both of them together was very labor intensive. So I would not make it again, but both of them are definitely on the family favorite list. And these dumplings, look at the inside, just delicious, tender, soft, crispy. Just delicious. Look at that crispy brown umami on there. The next meal we're working on is the beef stroganoff that we will serve over rice. This recipe is from a recipe book, so I will not have the link for you in the description. But for this, we are starting off with some onions that we're slicing and some mushrooms that we're slicing as well. So a lot of comforting winter hearty meals do take some time to cook up, especially when it's meat like this. So this has to be made early enough as well because it does have to cook for a little while. I will tell you later on about how long it takes to cook, but just keep that in mind that with any of those type of dishes that you would want in the winter, those warm, cozy meals, they will usually take a longer time to cook, which during this winter storm was perfect because all I wanted to do was be in the kitchen, stay warm, and for me, this means being in the kitchen over the heat, just keeping myself warm that way. Once I have the veggies prepped, I'm getting out a skillet over the heat. I'm going to add some oil in there, and we're going to add in our vegetables and let this saute until the onions are translucent. Now I'm going to get my meat ready. So I'm using a chuck steak. I'm going to get it out of the package. I'm going to remove the bone that's in there. And I'm going to cut them into strips. And I cut it into pieces that I felt would be a nice bite-sized piece without having to take like 2 bites out of the meat. And I just wanted to be able to eat the full piece at a time. And it was a perfect size cut for my family. In my opinion, it was a perfect size cut. Once the onions are translucent, I'm going to add in my meat in here, and I'm going to continue cooking this for another few minutes. Now, even though the recipe doesn't call for it, I am seasoning it with salt and pepper so I can layer the spices in this. While this continues cooking, we're going to combine the rest of our ingredients. So in a bowl, we're going to add in some flour, some tomato paste, salt, lemon juice, mustard, and some water. And we're going to combine this and set it aside. Now I'm moving this over to a smaller flame because now that the meat has cooked with the vegetables for a little bit, we are ready to add the sauce that we prepared, and this will have to go on a very low heat and simmer for about, I'm thinking I would have done it longer than the recipe called for. I would probably go for like an hour 45 to 2 hours. So I moved it over to my smallest flame. I am adding the sauce, mixing it together, covering it, and letting it cook. Like I said, I am serving this over rice. You can serve this over a pasta as well. So I'm starting off by plating this with some rice at the bottom of a bowl, and I'm going to spoon the meat over top of it. And because I'm doing it this way because I want all that delicious sauce or gravy that we made to just soak that starch, whatever you're using. And this is, again, became a family favorite. This is definitely going to be made again. The next dinner we'll be working on is our meat mushroom barley soup. This recipe is again from a book, so I will not have the recipe linked for you down below. But for this, we are going to start off with onions. We're going to dice that, and some garlic, which we are going to crush. And this, just like some of the other recipes that we made in this video, it will need to cook for quite a while. So again, you want to start it early enough so that it has time to cook and is ready for you when you want to eat. This I am serving, although it's a full meal, because as you'll see, it'll have the vegetables, it'll have some lima beans in there, and it has the beef. So it is a full meal in one dish. I am going to serve it with some garlic bread that we're going to make later on, just so that it feels like a more complete meal other than just a bowl of soup. Once our onion and garlic are ready, I'm getting a pot out. I'm going to get some oil in there. I'm going to heat it up, and we're going to add our onions and garlic in there. And we're going to let that saute for a few minutes. While our onions and garlic are sauteing, we're going to chop up some carrots, celery, and parsley root. I'm going to add these vegetables to the pot with our onions and garlic and continue sauteing for another few minutes. Next up, the recipe calls for some canned mushrooms. I don't like the texture of that, and I prefer using fresh. So I'm using the same amount of ounces that the recipe calls for. I'm just going to use the fresh instead. And it does call for sliced mushrooms. I am going to peel and dice them up instead. Once the vegetables in the pot are cooked down enough, I am going to add the mushrooms into the pot, and I'm going to continue cooking all of the vegetables for another few minutes. I'm going to mix this every couple minutes to make sure that it's not burning on the bottom. Once the vegetables are ready, we're going to add water, and we're going to add enough so that the pot is 3/4 full. Next, we're going to add in our beef neck bones. The bones will add a lot of flavor, and we'll have the meat that's on there as well. Now I'm going to add the last few ingredients, which is barley, lima beans. Over here I've got my spices, which is salt, black pepper, and the recipe calls for mushroom soup mix. I instead use my umami spice mix. And last is some flour dissolved in water. I'm gonna mix it to dissolve, add that into the pot, give it all a quick mix, and then I'm gonna cover and let it cook on low for a nice long time. When the soup is almost done cooking, I am getting out some baguettes that I had baked. These were par-baked baguettes that were frozen. I had baked it earlier in the day, and now I am just cutting them on a bias. I'm taking a different knife because this was not a good knife. And I'm cutting a bunch of slices out of this baguette, and I'm going to get it onto a parchment-lined baking sheet. Over here, I'm not following a recipe, so I'm just going by feel. So in a bowl, I am adding some oil, salt, garlic powder. You can use fresh garlic as well, minced up, and some parsley. This is parsley from the garden, which it had a little bit of moisture, so I have to rub it in my hands to break it apart. I am going to mix this all together and brush it over the top of all the slices. I am then going to get it into the oven and bake this until it's nice and golden crispy. Now we're back to the soup. It has done cooking, so I turned off the heat, and I'm going to get out our neck bones, and we're going to let the bones cool in the bowl that I have prepared over here, and we're going to let the soup start cooling off a little bit as well. Once our meat has cooled off a little bit, we're going to remove any meat off of the bones and shred it up and get it into the soup. As I was doing this, I realized that the bowl that I put the meat into is very small, so I got out another bowl. I'm putting the bones in there, separating the meat from the bones, and then I am going to shred up the rest of the beef and get that into the pot. Mix it to distribute the meat evenly, and then this is ready to be enjoyed. So in all honesty, I was very skeptical about this soup because I've never cooked with lima beans, and the lima beans that I've had in the past was not something that I enjoyed. But this was actually delicious. My entire family loved it. They have asked that I should make it again, and luckily I don't have to put the effort in of making it again because I got, I think, 32-ounce containers in my freezer. So whenever we want it, I can just reheat it from frozen. The final dinner we are making together today is a baked potato soup with grilled cheese sandwiches. So to make this, we started off by baking 2 potatoes on 350 for an hour and 15 minutes. I did not add any oil or spices to the potatoes. I just washed it, got it into a pan, and baked it. Now that we are ready to make the soup, I'm starting off by dicing a shallot very finely. I'm going to get some oil into a pan and let that start heating up. Once I have all the shallots chopped, I'm going to add that into the pot and let that start cooking down with some black pepper and salt. While I was peeling and chopping the potatoes, the shallots were ready, so the next step was to add some vegetable stock, bring it up to a boil, then reduce the heat, simmer covered for a few minutes before we are ready to continue with the next step. When the broth is done simmering, we're going to add in our cubed potatoes and continue cooking for another few minutes. During the last few minutes of cooking, we're going to combine the last few ingredients in a bowl. And for this, we need some half and half and milk. Now, I don't have half and half, but that is literally half cream, half milk. And I did have cream and milk in my house. So I'm doing half of the amount of the half and half in cream, the remaining in milk, and adding the additional milk that the recipe calls for. To the bowl, I'm adding some flour. We're going to combine this. We are getting hungry, so I want to start making the grilled cheese sandwiches. So I shifted the soup over to a different flame. I got a skillet out to make our grilled cheese in, and melting some butter in the skillet. Now I'm going to add some sliced bread to the pan. I'm going to jump between the two dishes. I'm going to add a slice of cheddar cheese and put the second slice on top. At this point, our soup is ready for our milk cream flour mixture, so I'm adding that in, stirring it in. We're going to bring it back to a boil and let it cook for another couple minutes before it is done. The grilled cheese sandwich is ready to be flipped, so I'm adding some more butter, flipping it over, and look at the beautiful umami again. So the soup is now ready to be plated up. So I'm getting a bowl out, I'm adding in the soup, I'm topping it with some sour cream and some chopped scallions. Now this, I'm very excited that I tried it, but none of us in my family loved it. We enjoyed it. It was good to try it, but it was definitely not something that we loved and we would be excited and ask to have again. So I don't think it's going to be added to our family favorite. And then here we have our grilled cheese sandwich. Now, for whoever wanted, I did add a layer of cheese, some sauteed onions, another cheese, and then the bread. So this is one without the onions. And over here I have one with the onions in it. And this is how I like it better. And I actually also forgot that we should add some cheddar cheese to the soup. So here it goes, and still not my favorite. So this is it for today's video. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to watch how I fed my family during this intense winter storm that we just went through. And I hope that you are inspired to make one or more of these recipes. And if you enjoyed this video, hope you will hit the like button and the subscribe button. And looking forward to see you in the next one.